Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's great to see you. My name is Delight Ejiaka. I am a virtual events assistant for Black Mountain Institute. BMI thanks its supporters, Beverly Rogers, Miriam Sharing, and the Rogers Foundation. I'll be introducing Courtney Maum shortly. Then after her conversation, she will take a few questions from the audience. We'll be talking about more. We talk Courtney about her work as a writer and educator towards today's topic on revising a full-length manuscript and querying. Please share any questions you have in the chat as we go, and we'll get to as many as we have time for. We'll also place a link in the chat to purchase Courtney's book. Please also join BMI at our upcoming virtual event, The Possibilities of Satire, with Sarah Papalado and Tony Tulatimute on March 12th at 12 p.m. PST. Free registration and full details are available at blackmountaininstitute.org. Courtney Maum is the author of 5 books, including the groundbreaking publishing guide that Vanity Fair recently named one of the top 10 best books for writers, before and after the book deal. A writing coach, director of the writing program Turning Points, and educator. Courtney's mission is to help people hold on to the joy of art making in a culture obsessed with turning artists into brands. Passionate about literary citizenship, Courtney sits on the advisory councils of the Authors Guild, Rumpus, and runs a best-selling Substack about publishing. You can sign up for her Substack and amazing online classes at courtneymaum.com. Her work has empowered thousands of writers across the globe, including myself, to understand the often misunderstood process of becoming an author in today's world. I would also say that Courtney's work inspired me to start my Substack and stay consistent. When Courtney is not tending to her horses or teaching writers across the world how to publish their books, she is watching Georgie and Mandy's first marriage with her family. Please welcome Courtney Maum in the chat if you can.
That was an awesome introduction, Delight. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
having
much.
me and for those very kind and generous words. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us from all these different places, some of which I'm deeply envious of. I'm in Northwestern Connecticut, living out the movie Frozen. It's just ice, ice, ice.
Yeah. Someone from Hawaii, like right now,
Yeah.
I would love to be in
Oh my
Hawaii.
gosh. This sounds really nice.
Yes.
Excited to be here.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, let's get into it. Let's talk about your book a little before and after the book deal. What made you write the book?
So before and after the book deal was technically my 4th book, in terms of publication timing, but it was a book I had inside me from the very beginning, because I'm someone, I mean, I'm getting better, right? But I'm a real Virgo, type A rule follower and recovering people pleaser. And I liked to do things right and, like I said, follow the rules. And when I was lucky enough to get my first book deal, there was just no user manual for this whole, not even publishing thing, but because there's so many great classes and institutions and programs to help you learn how to write tightly, write better, write plot, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. But once you get the agent and then the book deal, then there was just nothing. And I'm someone who didn't, I went to college, but I didn't study writing, creative writing, English. I didn't study any of those things in college. I studied French translation and comparative literature. I don't have an MFA. I didn't go to writing workshops. So I really needed a user manual, especially in terms of like social etiquette. I just didn't understand how anything worked. So, through each of my book publications, I just started paying attention to everything I didn't know and listening to mostly complaints, right, of people around me and everything that they didn't know, and started kind of compiling a list. And then when I realized, I'd published sufficient amount of books and with the Big Five and the indies, which felt important because I didn't want to write a book only from the point of view of someone who'd published with the Big Five or only with the indies or what have you. Um, Obviously I was never going to write this as a memoir, like one white woman's journey to publication. I wasn't going to do that. So I wanted to position myself as more of a tour guide or, you know, yeah, someone giving an open house. So for that book, especially because I didn't have an MFA, I really had to work very hard to make any context whatsoever in the industry, much less, friends, right? It took me a long time. And but I finally made a lot of contacts. And so I interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people for this book from all different walks of life and different backgrounds, and persuasions to make the book a proper well, I hope almost 360, yeah, 340-degree guide to publishing in North America. But as I was starting to pitch that book, a lot of gatekeepers told me not to publish it. That first of all, writers didn't need it, and that I was absolutely nuts if I thought that already published authors would read this book. I mean, they frankly told me that's crazy. And in fact, probably most of the mail I get, I like to say mail, even though, right, we're talking about electronic mail, but whatever, um, is from authors who felt really almost heartbroken or just totally disenchanted by their first book publication and had nowhere to put that heartache. Um, and so hearing from the actual agents and editors that writers didn't need this book reinforced for me how much the gatekeepers do not know or understand and perhaps sometimes care about what it is like, how emotionally unstable and even harmful it can be to either only receive rejections or, to actually start publishing books in the world. So, yeah, super long answer to your question.
No, that was a great answer. And that kind of like leads us into like the next thing we're talking about. Because I've heard you mention in interviews that your mission is to make the publishing world less opaque for writers who are trying to break into it. Can you talk about that a little more?
Absolutely. I mean, that really was certainly the mission of the whole book. And now, yeah, I really do feel like calling. Um, I just think that writing is already so hard, and most people, certainly when they're starting out, are doing it completely unpaid, often unsupported, even by their own family members or people who live with them, right? And it's just so solitary and so hard, that then once you feel you're ready to share something, the amount of just overwhelm and complete lack of clarity that most of us encounter makes many people wonder, what is the point? And should I give this up? When in fact, for many people, it's something that is life-saving for them, keeps their heart beating, right? It's like really important. So hate, I really hate thinking that there's people out there who've put their heart and soul in a book and then are just being ghosted by agents or gatekeeper, whatever the heck, or trashed in a writer's workshop by people who aren't even their ideal reader. I just, I really care. I care about writers. I really do. I think of almost all the artists. Writers are just so solitary and vulnerable and brave, and we need them. We need them more than ever, especially in America right now. So if there's anything I can do to help people feel less lost, have some more clarity in the whole thing, especially in terms of author rejections and what they mean, or developmental editors and how not to waste money on the wrong ones, which conferences are a waste of money, all the things. Like I really do want to be kind of a big sister to to all the
Yeah.
writers, um, because and it's also a pay it forward thing. Like the people who did take me aside and kind of explain things to me or just be really frank with me, whether it was about money, which is such a taboo, or any of the other difficult topics. Not only did they help me along in my career, but many people helped me from making some like big, big mistakes. whether they be financial or just social. And I just feel a lot of gratitude and yeah, I just want to help people. It's rough
Yeah.
out there.
No, that's amazing. Thank you for that care, and thank you for all the work you put in. And I feel like your Substack is kind of a part of that.
Yeah.
You made a post. It was titled "How to Complete a Massive Revision Without Losing Your Mind."
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
that was kind of the inspiration for this event, and I'm glad we could make it happen. So, for people writing a novel, a memoir, or story collection, how do you suggest they undertake a massive revision? Any tips or tricks?
Yeah. Well, definitely. So I made a video about this on my Substack. You can pretty much, I'm going to say search engine it. I'm going to try not to say Google anymore or LE because they seem to be supporting the orange one. So let me say search engine it. Because there's a whole video and this could take me the full hour and a half. So basically, if I try to get down to brass tacks, if you feel or have been told that you have a massive revision, the first thing, the first place you need to start out with is knowing what you're revising for, which is different from being told what you need to revise toward. At some point, you need to decide that you're on board with the feedback. And there's different things you could be revising toward, right? You could be revising toward a shorter length. Your book is just overlong. You could be revising toward more momentum or plot. You could be revising toward a deepening or texturization. Maybe your characters don't have enough interiority. Maybe you're revising toward a stronger sense of setting. So I think it's a huge mistake to start out with a revision where you say, well, I have to revise for all these things. I personally find that way, way, way too overwhelming. So I'll break up my revisions into marks I need to hit, tasks I need to accomplish. Generally, I start with word count because I tend to write overlong and then I need to tighten. So this is a huge blanket statement, but the writers I work with, manuscripts I read in early drafts, I think most people can stand to cut 15 to 20% of what's there, which could sound incredibly harsh. But especially if you're starting out, you're really early on your journey toward publication, I do think that that blanket statement kind of holds. Um, then I've taken notes on this because I just don't want to, I don't want to miss anything. Um, except I can't read my handwriting. Oh, yes. Okay. Okay. Then, for people who've taken my classes before, you probably know that I'm absolutely obsessed with highlighters and colored pencils. These are, I do not know what I would do without my little Muji colored pencils. So once I've personally, right, this is my approach, edited for length and just gotten a tighter version, it's easier for me to see like what I'm dealing with. Then I want to call out my mini motors. I like to make up like visual terms for things. So mini motors can be, mini motors for me are kind of like subplots, right? And I'll give them different color coding. So I have a book that's actually on submission right now. And my mini motors I wrote down. I've got a character who goes through a very deep personality change, like a total overhaul of his life and his meaning. And that's the major plot device, but still, so I'm going to give that a certain color coding. And then I've got a subplot that deals with party planning, one that deals with a pool construction. This is a very suburban Connecticut novel. One that deals with children. There's a whole thing going on with the kids, and then a subplot with the neighbors. So once I've got a tighter draft to work with, whatever I've color coded, I've assigned like pink to the kids and gray for the neighbors, what have you. First, I print out the tighter manuscript, and then I go through not reading for is this good? Is this bad? I just look for my mini motors, right? So I'll be like, oh, here are the kids. And I'll just swath the whole thing in pink. Oh, here's my personality change. Okay, purple, purple. And I do that for the entire printed out manuscript. And that allows me then to literally scan through it, almost flip through it like a flip book, to see to make sure that I have the proper, I think, Delight, do you mind going on mute? I don't know if there's traffic, just for a second. I'm not sure if oh yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. So that allows me to flip through it and scan to make sure that all of my subplots are, number one, showing up enough and with enough frequency that we don't forget them. And then I'm not giving too much attention to one over the other. Now, I do have a leading plot line, right? The purple one. So I want to see purple pretty frequently, at least every 4 or 5 pages minimum. The other little mini motor plots, they can maybe every 6 to 10 pages. It kind of depends on what's happening in that chapter. But I'm looking to make sure that there's not a 3 chapter stretch where there's no purple and there's no pink and it's only orange, right? So this is a way that helps me, and I think many other people, to distance themselves from, to leave the body of the author, right? We really do need to distance ourselves from the author, because the author needs to think that this is a genius piece of work. In order to survive and keep writing, we have to really believe that we're the best thing since like cheddar cheese. I really like cheddar cheese. I don't like Swiss cheese. And but the minute we're getting ready to query or maybe send off to a contest or whatever the heck it is, or we're asked for our full manuscripts, we need to be in editor mode, which is not at all, oh, this person's a genius, right? It's what's wrong with this. So the color coding thing really helps protect, just distance yourself from the relationship and the intimacy and affection that you've established for your own manuscript. And scanning for these colors helps you see your work in a new light. And also, you cannot argue. Like, it's really easy, I think, when you start getting feedback, whether it's in a writing workshop or another setting, to not believe people, right? To be like, ugh, they think that there's not enough interiority, but I know there is. Once you start actually doing this color coding thing, you're in front of your own self, right? You're only arguing with yourself. And if you see that there's 3 chapters in which the children, the little pink children plot is just not there, then it's not, Richard, who's a real jerk in writing workshop, telling you this, right? It's you, it's your writing. There's a problem right there, and you just can't lie to yourself. And then I'll do another stretch where I'm sort of searchlighting for principal narrative devices, such as, okay, where is their backstory? Where is their interiority? Where am I actively moving the plot forward? And I'll assign different colors. This is why you need a full set, right, of the highlighters or colored pencils, because I have many different little subcategories. So those sweeping, those essential things, right? Like, have I described the setting, the landscape? Is there backstory and flashback somewhere? Where is the interiority? And for people, especially who are being told, you have no plot, the book is too interior, and you don't understand what they're saying, if you do this highlighting thing, you'll see it, because you'll go, oh my gosh, the whole first 5 pages are all interiority. And thus, there's no plot, when I start off this book. Okay, and then I did want to read my notes. The sections that someone you trust has told you, like, this just isn't working or it's dragging, but for whatever reason you feel extraordinarily attached to, which happens. Those sections, I personally stand in the middle of the room, imagine that I'm at a reading series or a book event, and I read my work, that section out loud. And generally, reading it out loud and picturing people who are getting bored and on their cell phones allows me to kind of override whatever ego I might have in the game, whatever attachment I have to the pretty sentence I've written. And I read with a pen, and at that point, I just eliminate what I can tell is ego and needs to go. And then on that topic, sometimes I just know, like, oh, this is superfluous. I've overwritten, and I'm able to delete it. Always save your multiple drafts, right? You don't want to edit into your manuscript. You want to always be, if you're getting ready for a major revision, I always have a file name that has the original draft, and I make a copy, right? Because often I over edit and I need to go back. So even when you're deleting things, I have sort of a holding pen for my deleted parts. And I keep them all there because I reuse them, you know. But a little trick I do that might be helpful for people who are really attached to what they're considering cutting is I don't delete it right away. I do strike through, the tool in Word, strike through. And then I'll reread the chapter either in the computer, print it out, standing up in my room, whatever. And I'll read it without the struck through part. And 9 times out of, probably 10 times out of 10, I realize it's better without this. And then I find the courage to actually delete it. But I do start with the strike through first for sections that I'm on the fence about cutting. Okay. And then, oh, well, no, you know what? That's a question I'm getting out ahead of my skis. Okay. I think those are the main points for accomplishing a major revision. And I guess the last thing I would say is make sure that you have the stamina to revise. Far too often I see people go to writers' conferences or they've hired a developmental editor that they spent a lot of money on and they receive the feedback and they're like, oh, okay, fine. And they just take those marching orders. You really need some time to decide whether or not you agree with this and also to just recover energetically from, you know, the psychological warfare of handing your baby book to someone else and having them kind of dismantle it. So generally, when I'm gearing up for a major revision, I will get out of my office. I will go see a movie in my living room because all the movie theaters around me have closed. And I will read. I read. And that's the other missing piece that I didn't mention. If you are revising toward a specific thing, like more interiority, more setting and world building, or more whatever, you need to be reading from people who have published books that you admire, that are maybe even your comparative titles, that are doing that super well, right? So same thing with the highlighters. I'm always telling students, hey, if you're told that you just don't have a lot of setting, go pick up either an author like Cormac McCarthy or, you know, whomever, who are just excellent at setting, and you have to own the book to do this. Highlight, you know, or just take note of how many paragraphs does he stay in setting land, and then vice versa. You know, if you love the way that Melissa Broder, for example, does interiority, which isn't, she only uses like a paragraph and then she gets back to dialogue. So just train yourself to ape a ratio of whatever it is, interiority to dialogue or setting to exposition, that you like in other people's published work, and then just literally copy the ratio. Be like, okay, I'm only allowed 1 paragraph of setting, and then I need 2 of dialogue, and then I need 1 of interiority. It's very, like, I used to teach a class that broke down the length of Taylor Swift's songs, like her big hit songs. And there is such a I think radios only play 3-minute songs now. So everyone has a formula of when you have to hit the bridge and when you have to hit the chorus. And while there's not, you know, I don't want to tell people there's rules. I think when you're revising, it can be helpful to pretend that there are rules, just to tighten your SHIT up. I will stop talking now.
No, that's amazing. No, I think like you hit all the major points. And there's something that I've heard you talk about. It's called the beat sheet.
Beat
So I
sheet,
would
yeah.
love you to talk about that and share it with us. Yes.
Ah, the old beat sheet. So, my husband's a filmmaker and we write films together with some frequency. So the beat sheet is originally like a Hollywood term. And in Hollywood, it exists. This is how it works in Hollywood, right? So some big exec will get a screenplay, be bigger than this, right? And they basically they're like, yo, unpaid intern, go beat this out for me and bring it back. And they only have a couple hours to do it. What that entails is the unpaid intern or lowly assistant will go take the screenplay and well, there's not really just pretend that there's paragraphs, okay, for the sake of what we're doing. Paragraph by paragraph, they will write the major beats or action points that are moving the screenplay forward, thus enabling them they'll write like a synopsis of the whole thing for the executive, But again, it's a scanning device where then the exec can sit down and instead of reading the whole screenplay, they just flip through and go, okay, we open in Nevada, page 2, major drought, page 3, unemployed person, right? It just allows us to read the screenplay in, maybe 15 minutes or something. So it will take you much longer than 15 minutes to do this for a novel or a memoir. It's excellent, excellent, excellent for personal essays and short stories because you can do it really quick. But either you can beat out chapter by chapter or paragraph by paragraph. Now, if you can no longer see the forest for the trees with your book, it's been workshopped to death, you've over edited, or it's just so long, or you've simply been working on the darn thing for so long you don't even know what you have anymore, the beat sheet will save your life. And I have many essays about this. You can use the search engine to find it. But effectively, and you need to be really honest with yourself, and you're not writing huge paragraph summaries. It's a couple of words a paragraph, right? Main character is ashamed. Next one. Main character buys a car. Next one. Gets flat tire, right? And what this allows you to do is sort of the same thing that I was saying before. If your beat sheet, especially if you're about to query, has Courtney's sitting on the couch thinking, second paragraph. Sitting on the couch thinking, paragraph 3. Drinks tea, paragraph 4. Spills tea. You're not getting the book deal, right? This is not how we start. We need we need more stakes and momentum. So it's just another way to help you not lie to yourself and to protect you financially so that you don't have to hire developmental editors. My big thing, people do contact me really often. They want me to work with them as a developmental editor. And I'm like, okay, get ready. The way I work is all about empowering people to never hire me again, just like so I want to teach people how to edit themselves so they can save money and just get better at this whole editing thing. So all throughout our talk today, you'll hear me share tips on how to make yourself buck up and view your work as in an outer body type of way so you feel less attached to it and thus can revise it better.
No, yeah, that's really empowering. I really love that. Thanks for sharing that. And I'd like us to like pivot a little to like the querying aspect of this.
Yeah.
Um, how do you think when how does someone know that their manuscript is ready to be queried? Because there's lots of like
Yeah.
processes and thoughts out there, but how would you know that your manuscript is ready to be queried?
This is like the $1 million question, right? And I think I don't think enough people ask the right question. I think the first question is, how do you know when you're ready? Like you, the author, are ready to query? Because so many people come to the table with a manuscript that they think is ready, but they haven't prepared themselves. What does it look like to be prepared yourself? You don't need an MFA. The days where people thought that and it's great if you have one. I'm not going to look down on people with MFAs, but it's not necessary, right? It's necessary to read, to be part of the literary world in some way, and to have worked really, really hard on your manuscript. But first of all, if it's memoir, you really should not be querying unless you have already placed some pretty highfalutin essays that dance with the topic or topics of your book. You're just not helping yourself. It really is worth waiting however many months before you can get something somewhere, whether it's on a podcast or in you know, an important publication or whatever. And then in novel land, it certainly does help to have some short stories published or to have been to a residency or a writing workshop, or you've started a reading series, you're part of some writing group. Like it just in 2025, if you have a query that describes your book really well, but then you just have no proof of literary citizenship, remember that querying is a job application, right? So if you're applying to be a mechanic, you would naturally indicate the garages you'd worked at before, or that you tinker with people's cars in your own garage, right? You follow the metaphor. So first you start with your own preparation. Do you have, and of course these days the gatekeepers are all looking for the P word, right? Platform, but forget platform. It's a dumb word that doesn't actually reflect what it means to be ready for publication. What it means to be ready for publication is that you have some channel, bridge somewhere in your life that is connecting you already to your target audience, your ideal readers. That could be a newsletter. For me, it's a newsletter. It could be a big following on Instagram. It could be this incredible reading series that you founded in your town. It could be that you own a bookshop. So it can be online, it can be in person, but it does need to be something. You do not need to be in all the places. You need to be somewhere shining, right? So that's the person, that's the author. And then when it comes to the manuscripts, for me, I have a class on this called Hook Them from the Opening Pages. Your opening pages, my big argument, regardless of whether it's memoir or novels, is that from like paragraph 1, honestly, but definitely page 1, you need to establish two things: the preoccupation of the book or the main character or the narrator, if it's a memoir, and their occupation. You know, from page 1, we kind of need to understand what's at stake here. What is this motor of the book composed of? Where are we? And what's our narrator's deal, right? Like, a lot of people forget to introduce the driver of the story, right? They'll even just be like, she looked out the window and felt bad about Mark, and then picked up her tea. I'm like, who's she? Who's Mark? You know, like, people need to tell more in the beginning of a novel or memoir than they normally do. And then I guess the last thing I would say, because, you know, this question, of course, is a bit of a riddle, because we're never done revising. We get it to a point of near completion where we're ready to query, and then it's near completion enough where we're ready to submit to editors, and so on and so forth. But we're just constantly revising this dang book. So the last thing I would say is that your opening to your manuscripts should present the reader with 1 to 3 green question marks. I'm going to explain this in the opening pages. The green question marks are the things that keep the reader turning the page, right? They're kind of like the preoccupation of the story, the thing, classic, right? The thing the person wants, that there's an obstacle that keeps them from getting what, you know, or we introduce kind of especially if it's a mystery or crime, we introduce something a bit curious or odd that needs to be solved. We need to turn the page to find it. Some juicy little tidbit that puts a beautiful green question mark representing intrigue in the reader's mind. You are going to have a hard time on the query if, instead of the green question marks, your opening pages or your query letters incite all red colored question marks. So red colored question marks, remember how I said, you know, she looked out the window and thought about Mark, and then we forget to introduce Mark. That's a red question mark. Your reader can only hold so many red question marks, and they're going to be sitting there going, well, who's Mark? When am I going to find out who Mark is, right? So you want to read your opening chapter before you send out your queries, and make sure that you're not presenting anyone with that you're not forcing any red question marks upon the reader. And this is true for your query letter, and this is also true for your opening chapters. Make sure that there's just green question marks. Now, that's going to be hard for you to do because you think you're ready and you love your book. So give it to someone else who's a really astute reader and have them decide whether it's green lights all the way or red, 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 red. Yeah. So again, right, hard question to answer, but you need to be ready first, second, and third. And then the manuscript needs to be inciting all green question marks and no red ones.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. I feel like you're a really good teacher, and I'm like grasping all that you're saying. And you mentioned that it's like revise, revise, revise. So let's touch on like revision just
Yeah.
a little bit more. What is structural revision and how is that different from other kinds of revision?
Oh gosh. So that's a great question. Structural revision is the hardest. Sh- Being told that you need structural revision is going to put some real hair on your chest. It's the hardest thing to do because, it's like open heart surgery. It's just everything becomes you have to sew everything back up. So if we're revising for more interior, or like I have a revision that's going to be coming upon me soon. But it's going to be something where paragraph by paragraph, I just texturize, deepen. My structure doesn't need to be changed. So while challenging, it'll be a mostly pleasant and rewarding revision. What is a structural revision? Well, it could be that you have a memoir and it's a narrative memoir and it's chronological, which seems like a good structure for a memoir, but in fact, because of the way that memory works, narrative chronological memoirs, often people will be told, hey, could you do this as a hybrid structure or reported or, I don't know, auto fiction, whatever, asking for a big change in the structure. So generally what that would mean is that you're going to have to be moving immense pieces of the book around and be putting them into different places, changing the balance of past to present. And for a couple months, you're just going to have this massive mess because you've chopped the body of your book into so many parts. Then you need to suture everything back up. And it's just frankly grisly and really hard and can feel incredibly overwhelming to people. Ditto with our novel writers, right? Like, um, phew, structural changes could be hearing and agreeing with. Let's remember that sometimes we're given advice to do structural changes and it's not the right advice, or we just don't agree with it. So for a novel, it could be, hey, I think you've chosen the wrong narrator, or we need some extra narrators, or you're starting in the wrong place, right? All of those they just take more stamina, more willpower, and more determination, I think, than I don't know, developmental edits that require deepening and texturization. Yeah, they're just harder. And you'll need like a therapist or someone to hold your hands or like a really, really good developmental editor. They're just really hard. And I think with structural edits, you can sometimes be at risk of blowing up the whole thing, and they're just it's risky territory. Often it's worth doing it, but it's just hard.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. And also, I like that you mentioned like how much stamina you need for all this revision and how much like just brain power is needed. Because sometimes people think writing is a
Crazy.
simple, like
Oh yeah,
easy job.
right, right, exactly, right. We're just writing with a little candle and a beautiful carpet with a cat on the carpet. Like no, no, no. It's like
Yeah.
blood on the floor. It's really hard, 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 hard. And again, that's why I keep hammering on like make sure that you want to do this because sometimes we just need to put these projects on the back burner until we recover our energy or confidence. Because especially if you've been querying a long time and getting no, no, no's, and then, you know, agent number 95 on your wish list says like, I might consider this if you put it 100 years in the future and you have a different narrator. And at that point, you're like, I'll do anything to get published, when in fact, that's not something you want to do. Sometimes we really do get to a place of kind of mania and exhaustion, and it can be really recommended to just take a break until we can return to a more balanced mindset, right? And
Yeah,
make
yeah.
informed decisions, especially with the developmental editor thing. Far too often people think the fact that I Venmoed this person thousands of dollars means that everything they say is right. And it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. I mean, it can if you found someone great, but a lot of people don't, they don't realize they have the wrong developmental editor until they've been querying for 2 years and they have to hire someone else, you know. So I have, again, I have an essay on my Substack. You can search engine how to, or it's something like what to know before you hire a developmental editor.
Yeah, thank you so much. Also, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll soon get to the questions. But before we get to those questions, I'd like to ask you a couple more questions. I think you mentioned like agents, right? And
Yeah.
so how does a writer interpret like the rejection hierarchy?
Mm.
What is a revise and resubmit compared to a different kind of rejection or like
Yeah.
acceptance?
So I'm very big on decoding rejections. I teach this a lot in my classes. I write about this a lot in like Substack notes. And recently I've seen a lot of, I've experienced a lot of pushback from people that are like, agent rejections are meaningless. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion and it's based on one's experience. I think that decoding agent rejections is a very worthy exercise because I believe that if you're getting ghosted, meaning you're not getting any response whatsoever to your letter, that would be the bottom of the rejection hierarchy, right? The bottom is just no response whatsoever. If that's the bulk of responses you're getting, there's something wrong with your query, probably, but your manuscript, right? There's something off. Usually it's because there's just no indication whatsoever of plot and momentum and stakes, or plot and stakes, let's say, and that holds for memoir. If it's memoir and you're being completely ghosted, generally that means that your story is too personal. There's not a universal aspect to it. All the action, all the content is in the past. You're still in diary cathartic land. And there's no media angles, right? And then you kind of go up from there. I mean, nobody likes to hear this, but when you first start out on the query circuit, generally the best thing you can be hoping for is personalized feedback. And if you get personalized feedback, that's gold because it's a huge game of hot and cold, right? Basically, querying is a quest to find out whether or not you're ready, right? You asked me earlier, Delight, like, how do you know when you're ready? Well, the rejections let you know if you're ready, right? So if you're starting to get rejections that are not just personalized, but encouraging, such as, you know, your voice is incredible, and I read this with great interest. Unfortunately, I have another client right now, and I'm representing a book on Appalachia. It's just a conflict of interest, you know, better luck elsewhere. I'm passing with regret. You're really on to something, right? Or, you know, with memoir, like, I actually think there's a lot of value in this proposal or manuscript, whatever. In this market, I would need you to have a little bit more of an established platform. That sucks to hear, but that's worthy advice. And again, that doesn't mean you need to run off and spend a year shining and accumulating followers in every single place, especially now where people are actively leaving Meta-owned sites, right? But it does mean like, okay, so go place some personal essays, try to get on podcasts, right? Sorry, I've kind of gone off the rails with this question. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's great answer. Great answer. With that, I really enjoy answering all of this. Like, I feel like this is for me. I'm taking all the notes.
Well, can we actually take that pause, Delight? Can you just tell us a little bit about you and what you like to write? Just kind of frame our
Yes.
discussion.
So yeah, I write mostly fiction. Currently finishing my novel. I'm a final
Go get them.
year MFA student at the University of Nevada. So I'm hoping that after this, like I can go and like revise my manuscript one more time and then hopefully go querying. So
Yay.
yes, so
Well,
excited.
good luck out there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask some questions that we have. Someone says, what if you have an agent already? When do you know you're ready for submission?
Well, your agent should know, right? I mean, here's the thing, like I'm on my third agent, but I've done all my books, all 5 books with that third agent. The mistake I made when I started out was going with the guy who he happened to be male, who told me I was a genius, right? That my manuscript was perfect and ready to go. Now, at that point, I think I was 24, maybe. I'm 46 now. So obviously I wanted to hear that. Obviously I'm a comedic genius. So couldn't have agreed more with him. Well, now that I'm 20 years older and change, I now know that having an agent or even an editor tell you that your manuscript is perfect is a huge red flag. So for example, I have a novel on submission right now with editors, which I highly don't recommend doing during the fall of a democracy. It's quite stressful. But, you know, I told my agent, if we have these calls with editors and they're too complimentary, not going with them. I want to hear from the people that are like, so much to love about this, but here's all the problems. Because the market's only getting more competitive, even for established authors, with this orange fascist, it's going to be harder than ever to get coverage for books in the rapidly disappearing media space. It's just hard. It's going to get harder. So it's just not realistic if someone's like, you genius, this is print ready, let's go, right? My agent works me to the bones. I thought I was ready to go on submission well over a year ago. Well over a year ago. Like summer of 2024, right? 22, just forever ago. We just went on submission. I mean, when the difference between when I thought I was ready and when she thought I was ready was a year and a half. Absolutely brutal. And I was actively working for a year and a half, really hard, but it's gonna pay off. I just know it is. So how do you know you're ready? Well, hopefully you have an agent who's savvy enough to tell you when you're ready. But I think you're ready when you, first of all, have a killer title, just an amazing title that really telegraphs what the book, story, collection is about. And when you have a really sticky premise, or at least can fake it in like a one line, I call them log lines, right? That's also a Hollywood term, just a 1 sentence summary that makes your book sound unputdownable. Now, it shouldn't be completely made up, right? It should be based on the content of your book. But if you have a killer book title and a kind of marketable premise, and then especially for nonfiction and memoir, if you have valid marketing angles, meaning a publicist can look at your whatever it is, pitch letter, query, synopsis, and already see how they would pitch your book and to whom and which outlets, then I think you're ready. But you don't want to be querying with something that has a title that's too personal to you. It's some personal joke or it's something that only you can understand, or like classic fail with titles is, oh, well, you'll understand the book title when you get to chapter 7. No, if you can't pitch your book, in 20 seconds, you're not ready. That just means there's no stakes. There's no plot. I know that plot is not popular, but you have to have stakes. At least you have to have some reason why people are turning the page, even if you're doing something super experimental. You know, it's in poetry, people read for kind of vibes and atmosphere, and we think that we do that in fiction. But in fact, I've like really looked into this, and even the most experimental fiction, there's usually some question that has been posed by the project that we need to turn the pages to answer. And that, I'm afraid, my friends, is PLOT.
The P word, plot.
Yeah, and platform. All the bad words just start with P in publishing.
Publishing,
Yeah.
yes.
There you go.
Oh, thank you. This question says, when negotiating any of your book deals, what did you have to compromise on? And what would you recommend debut authors keep in mind?
Mm. Well, I mean, if we're talking at the contract level, because by negotiating book deals, I think of like we're at the contract level. I'm not sure that that's what this person meant, but at the contract level, when you're just starting out, there won't be a bunch you can do about royalty rates. They've been set in stone for like 170 years. I'm hoping we can change that, and they need to be increased. But you can try to get in bonus language. So if you sell a certain amount of copies in a certain amount of time, and also these days you really want to make sure that your publisher has that there's contractual language around AI and that you're protected against the use of your book by artificial intelligence, and that if it's used, you're remunerated, right? This is a legal thing. And then once you're past that, you know, you want to have initially conversations about the title and make sure that everyone's on board with the title. And it's not a bad idea early on to start having some discussions about covers. You know, if you're, for instance, my first book was called I'm Having So Much Fun Here Without You. And it took place in Paris, and it was about you know, an adulterer. And really early on, I was like, listen, if you show me a cover that has an Eiffel Tower with like a heel, a high heel, and a necktie tossed on the ground or something, like I'm gonna walk. Um, I also remember telling them that I hate cupcakes and don't want cupcake served anywhere, right? Which sounds so obnoxious, but I think that leads me into saying that while you don't want to come out the gate difficult, you want to come out the gate as someone who's a game player, you know, team player. You also, especially if you represent sort of a marginalized voice, you're a person of color, you're coming from the queer community, you want to make sure that everyone is on board with how you are positioning yourself and want to position yourself. So, you know, that starts obviously from pronouns and things like that, but it stems much larger than that, right? You really want to make sure that in the publicist's pitch letters, you are not being incorrectly positioned or positioned in a way that's going to come back to haunt you, right? You want to be empowered and take agency over the way that you're being branded, right? For lack of a more gentle term. But yeah, cover and title are usually the places where often some compromise needs to happen. I thankfully have a real ball buster of an agent, and I'm not frightened of confrontation. So I haven't I haven't had to do too many compromise.
I love that. This question is it kosher to serialize your novel on Substack as you write it if you intend to try going the agent slash publisher route?
No, don't do that. Absolutely don't do that. Any form of serialization of your project, meaning what is serialization? Okay, every month you're going to get a fresh chapter from my book. Watch me write my novel. That is going to be or memoir. That's going to be considered self-publication by the gatekeepers. So they're just going to say, oh, you know, sorry, you shot yourself in the foot. There's an exception to that, which is if, as there always is, right? If it goes wildly viral, right? You get 400,000 people following your romance with the Sasquatch, right? Well, fine. If so many people are clamoring to read your book because you've serialized it, yeah, you probably will find an exception. How often do those exceptions happen? I don't know. To be frank, I think I'd say once every 5 years, right? It's really rare. So I think you'd be better served to tease your book. You can share excerpts. Here's a chapter, like not a chapter. Here's the way that my book opened originally. Here's the first page. Here's how I've revised it because I took Courtney's What's Wrong with My Book class. and here's the first page now. That's not serialization. Those kinds of teasers, here's a little glimpse of a sex scene, right? You can tease it, and actually that's far more useful than serializing your book. Show people how you're writing, show them how you're revising, give little glimpses, like a little strip tease, right? But don't give away the whole thing, because then you really have shot yourself in the foot, and agents and editors can't, you think you can't do the traditional publication thing then.
Yeah, thanks for that answer. This question is, what if you get lots of full requests, but generic reasons afterwards, like I couldn't connect with the protagonist or this story isn't right for me?
Yeah. Well, if you're getting lots of requests, this is a great question. If you're getting lots of requests right away to your query saying, oh, please send me the first 3 chapters, or please send me the whole manuscript. Okay, number one, you've written an excellent query letter, and or you're very well positioned. You know, you have the platform to make this work or whatever. If you're getting rejected after all these full manuscript requests, then there is a problem with your manuscripts, that or proposal, or both. It's just non-negotiable. Either your writing is not at the level at which it needs to be, which, like, what does that mean? Your writing is not at the level. Maybe you just don't understand the correct ratio yet between exposition, dialogue, interiority, flashback, plot, whatever. There's something off with the balance of the writing. Because honestly, I'm just someone that, we talk a lot about voice, especially in MFA programs. I don't think it's all that magical or mysterious. Like, I've read a lot of books where I am turning the pages like mad, and it's not because of the writing, right? Like Twilight comes to mind. I just needed to know if they were going to make out. Like, was she going to make out with the vampire, right? The writing was not what was bringing me there. So I don't know that, like, oh, I didn't feel drawn as swept away as I had hoped. It doesn't have to be a dig at your voice or writing style, but generally it just means like the elements aren't lining up well enough. You need to go read more, or just work a little bit more on this, and polish it. And wait, did I see getting lots of full manuscripts requests? Yeah, there's something wrong with the manuscript. You probably, at that point, if you're getting, let's say that you've queried 15 people, and almost right away 11 people requested, or even 7, and then all of those people say, like, I just wasn't drawn into it, you got to stop right there. You can take my What's Wrong with My Book class online. Excuse the upsell, but eggs are $12, you know, so like, don't blame a lady for trying. No, but really, there's something. Stop querying. Do not keep querying these people. Remember how I told you, like, use those rejections to play the hot and cold game. You were real hot with your query, you're real cold with your manuscript. So what's wrong? Your manuscript. There's something wrong with your manuscript. So either find out what it is yourself, or hire a really good person to tell you what it is, and then you go back out.
No, that's an amazing answer. I feel like we only have time for one more really quick question. I'm writing an epistolary novel.
Oh, I
Any
can't
special
repeat that.
consideration? Epistolary novel. Any special considerations?
Okay, so the E word, right, means that the book takes place in exchanges of letters. Oh man, what is a hard question to end with? It might be stumped. Um, God, this might be a tough market to have a book written that way. I don't know. Frankly, I don't know. That's a hard question if I know nothing about the plot. I mean, you're gonna need something that is keeping people turning the pages. And again, it's not going to be the writing. It needs to be that there's some mystery that these people, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4, are trying to solve, or something starts to develop as the writing progresses, right? So maybe, for instance, let's just imagine a situation where I have just purchased a house, and I am writing my real estate agent because I think there's a haunting, right? And they write back with maybe some legalese. And so I start writing to someone else like that. And then it can start progressing. And maybe it turns to Facebook messages, it depends on, for some reason, I have the instinct that maybe this is a kind of historical book, but whether it's historical, it takes place pre-cell phone, pre-social media, pre-text, whatever, find some way to, I don't want to say spice it up, but put a little oxygen in, because a whole novel that's letter writer one, letter writer two, letter writer one, letter writer three, letter writer, it's hard to pull off. So sometimes you might need a little like intermission, or just a different, a grocery list thrown in if it's historical, or a receipt, right? Or if we're in the present day, I don't know, a list of Amazon orders purchased, or a cease and desist, right? Just try to, you don't want to see seesaw structures. I mean, Gone Girl worked. Like, Gone Girl got away with the he said, she said, he said, she said, but it got away with it because she was like 100 different personalities, right? So it's just that's a hard thing to pull off. So I think definitely read books that succeeded in recent years in that. Again, I can't pronounce that word. I never have been able to. But you're gonna have to put some bells and whistles on the whole thing, because unfortunately, I think right now that that's not like popular, and we shouldn't care, right? Trends change. So you just have to get out ahead of the knowledge that that's not like a hot form right now, and make it hot.
I
Right?
love that answer.
That was a tough question.
You gave it a really good shot. That was a great answer. People are upvoting this question, so I'm going to read it really
Okay, yeah,
quickly.
sure. I mean, listen, I'm here.
No, but we have just, I think this is the last one, and I think I lost it. It's Jamie's question. I had it right here, and then I lost it.
Take your time. I've got water.
Is it true that proposals for memoir are becoming preferred over full manuscripts? Should memoirists have both?
Oh, this is such a, like, one of my big things is that far too much is asked of authors these days, and that's why I'm really gunning to see if we can't do some advocacy work to raise author royalty rates, because it's one thing, if you're in the 1960s, you send off your manuscript, it gets accepted, and then you just have to kind of show up for lunch with your editor and have a martini and then go back in a cave. It's something else entirely, right? When the whole publisher is like, hey, can you do a social media campaign? Can you write all of your contacts for pre-order links? Can you start a newsletter? We need you to have a podcast. This is unpaid labor. And it drives me nuts. And so I'm always counseling authors who have some lever, like they're established a little bit, to push back for our brothers and sisters and others coming after us, so that people don't feel that they have to say yes to all this nonsense. So circling back to the question, yes, unfortunately, it is true that many agents, editors, not only in memoir and nonfiction land, do they want to see a complete or almost completed manuscript, they also want to see a completed proposal and a synopsis. I would rather have a colonoscopy than write a synopsis. They are, to me, the hardest things to write. I would rather, beat sheets are far more useful. So unfortunately, that is true. I think it's ridiculous, and I think it's unfair. But from everything I'm hearing, that is true. Now, sometimes you can, if you have something like really in nonfiction land, like how to become a trad wife in 30 days, something that's quite in the zeitgeist. I'm not for trad wives, but I'm just using this example, right? Generally, you can get away with a proposal and then the sample chapters, right? But if you have an artful memoir, especially a narrative memoir, honestly, those books just, it's so silly to have a proposal, but they make sense to have the completed book. And then, yeah, I think out there you will be expected to have a proposal, which again, I just think is garbage, but this is the trend right now. And if you go to my website, I have an extremely affordable class that teaches you how to write a proposal. So take that and Godspeed. And honestly, I feel for you because it's just garbage ask. Not the question, sorry, not the question, right?
I
But
agree.
garbage expectation.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for your honesty, for your in-depth answers. This was amazing.
Delight, thank you for having me. This is a very nice way to enter an icy weekend. And, you know, for everyone who's listening live now or later, you know, just like, just keep going. I know how hard it is. I really do. And it's worth it. Your story is worth it. And just be comforted by the fact that the days when, you know, having an agent and then a traditional book deal were the only ways to do it, they are so far behind us. It's almost a joke. I mean, I just sent a blurb in today for a self-published book that I thought was absolutely dynamic. So awesome. It was a memoir that's been up against all this nonsense like, oh, nobody wants to hear about birth trauma. Oh, really? Maybe the millions of women who had birth trauma want to hear about it, right? So just like there's so many ways now with digital media, the pros of digital media are that there's so many empowering and super affordable ways to get your story out in the world. So just don't be disheartened. If you're getting all these no's from kind of the traditional establishment, then go non-traditional and find a way to say yes to yourself. And the numbers of books that the sale units, right, of big five debuts, except for the ones that break out, are so low these days. It's like under $2,000, right? It's $2,000, sorry, 2,000 sales. So what I'm saying is you've got a big five book deal. You might even be a lead title. It's your first time out. A lot of those titles are selling under 2,000 copies. And I have all these contacts who are self-publishing and they're selling 5,000 copies or upwards. So, you know, I understand the kind of convenience and ease and ego attachment to the traditional publication thing, but if it's not a joyful path and it's ruining your attachment to your art and your life and your story, then screw it. You know, you're only going to get 7 or 10% of every copy sold. So why not get 100%, you know, going in some non-traditional way, right? I mean, there is a path to publication for everybody. There really is. It's just not the traditional path won't be the one for everyone, and nor should it, you know. So I hope that's inspiring instead of disheartening. I mean it to be exciting.
Yeah, this is really inspiring. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. Please join our upcoming events. Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you so much, Delight, and good luck out there in Queryland. I will absolutely be rooting for you.
I appreciate it.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye.